Video number 3. How to Attack Atheism, Part 2. Quote, Atheist, how do you account for the laws of logic within your atheism? Isn't logic a process of the mind? Yes. Isn't logical thought based upon the laws of logic? If logic is conceptual, a process of the mind, and certainly appear to be universally true, then what are the conditions that must be in place in order for the laws of logic to be universally true so that you can cite them and use them? How do the truth statements that we call the laws of logic obtain their universal nature? How do you know that the laws of logic are true? Do you just assume that they are true? End quote. Holy moly alimony! Yeah! What are we supposed to, cop a pasta all of that into the chat room? The whole thing? Well, there's some minor instructions given after this, but I'll cover those after I deal with all of these questions. So, I gotta show these questions on the screen, so I'd have to say them again, and sorry for those of you who just wanted to listen to this. There are 3 answers that we could give. 1, we don't need to. 2, that's an incoherent question you just asked. And 3, I don't know. Let me start with the first answer and why that one's true. Read any logic textbook, and it will lay down the way logic works. At some point, it may or it may not address why/how the rules work. Just, they do. There isn't a mystery here. It works. The rules are made up by us humans. The laws might as well be called rules. They work because they have to work. If they don't work, then something's wrong with them. And we should see it when we test to see if logic's working. Depending on what rule we're testing, we'll get a different result based on that rule and the test that we would have to do to confirm that rule. And, of course, we face the limit of logic when doing this. We have to check with reality that lies, in a sense, outside of logic to see if the rules worked. So, for example, it's A or it's B. It is not A, therefore it is B. So in place of A and B, we put cat and dog. So it's either a cat or it's a dog. It's not a dog, so it's a cat. And if those were our real choices in reality, then bam, rule works. There you go. Every rule in logic has run the gauntlet of tests already. We can see them work on paper as well as in real life, and the proof is in the conclusions yielding the results. We have nothing to account for here. The second answer, the question itself is incoherent. There is nothing to account for. The rules or laws are not things in the universe. They are concepts in our brain. That's it. You might as well ask why the musical chord D is always the musical chord D. The answer is, it just is. Can you account for the musical chord D always being D? What sort of question is that? It's an incoherent one, just like this one. Number 3, let's just say that I don't know the answer. Now what? You're just going to insert that Christianity can account for something that needs no account for it anyways. But if I don't know, and you produce an answer, that answer better be able to withstand critical analysis. Guess what? Their answer doesn't. Next question. Wow, just say the answer for me, why don't you? So, here's how I envision that going down. The poor sheeple are just pasting the question and answer into chat, and the atheist is like, yes, I agree. And they're like, duh, I'm a dumb sheeple. Because, I mean, they asked the question and then they gave the answer to... Anyways, right, it's a process of the mind. But it's also a process similar to math in that it has formulas we can write down and we can go through them step by step. Yes it is. My lobster sense indicates that bullcrap is incoming very soon. Yep, there it is. Lots and lots of bullcrap. So much. I can't even. No conditions must be in place. As far as them being universally true, yes. As far as I know, logic would work the same on any other planet as it does here. as long as the same laws of physics work, then I don't see why logic would work any differently. Maybe in a different universe where things are very different, then logic would reflect the reality of that universe. See, that's the thing that they're like deliberately putting it all the wrong way around. It's got to be deliberate. Okay? The laws and rules of logic are based on our observations of the things that we see here on Earth and how things tend to work here on Earth. But that's a wholly naturalistic explanation of how we made logic, so we can't use that one. This is leading to even bigger nonsense. Okay, play along with me at home there, or wherever you happen to be. Is your computer a computer? Would it still be a computer if you launched it into orbit? Would it still be a computer if it was on a different planet? Let's just say your computer's flying around in space and every living thing dies out. Would it still be a computer? If you said yes to all of those questions, and you should have, then you've just won the law of identity game. Yay! It's universally true because that's how it freaking works, you freaking webpage rage! Look, I know it's hard, Slick, for you to understand anything that isn't spoon-fed to you like you're doing with your sheeple here, but rules never obtain a universal nature. They start out being always true. Now, let's just say, for fun, that someday we go to a planet, we find out that a cat is in fact a dog somehow. Well, that pretty much ruined the law of identity, at least on that planet, and it would be time to rewrite some bits of logic, wouldn't it? Yeah, it would. But, Slick, you can't understand that, so meh. Hopefully you at home or work will get that. The rules we have in logic reflect what we've found to be true on Earth. We assume that they keep being that way on other planets. We also assume that they're universally true in that way. We could be wrong in that assumption, I suppose, but until we find out that we are, we can assume that we're right about this. But Matt wants to make logic an object, so we have to ignore how it really works, I guess. I'd like at this time to cite Ken Ham in his debate with Bill Nye. You see, we have this book. If this sounds a little bit like Precept, it's because, yeah, that's really where Precept kind of stole this from. Not directly from Slick, but the whole laws of logic equal God argument is Precept's whole bag of tricks right there. And then asking, how do you know it's true over and over again, is their only real thing to do. So we know it's true in the same way that we know math is true. We can see it working over and over again. It's not that difficult to understand unless you're a sheeple. And of course we have the dichotomy that either it's true or it's not true. So if the laws of logic are true, then they work. And if they aren't true, then they don't work, and we have a problem, and I guess everyone is screwed. So if we check that they're working, and they are, then bam! So if you take an apple, and then you take a second apple, you now have 2 apples. Now you take them and shove them in your... No! Go away, I don't like you. We could know that they're true by testing each and every one of them. So far, they've passed the test. Okay, so here's the instructions that Mac gives his sheeple. Quote, this approach is a bit more complicated. If you use this one, first be familiar with the Christian worldview, the atheist worldview, and logic. End quote. By this, Matt means you should read his view of the Christian worldview, his straw man of atheists having a worldview, and the horrible page on logic that should burn in fire and die a horrible death after being crushed by a steamroller and then chunked into a black hole. Also, I blow it up with TNT and do bad stuff to it. I'm sorry, I'm just not going to go to a page created by Slick about logic. It will completely nuke my brain, and I'm already having enough problems not losing it in this video. Moving on. Quote, First of all, when using logic, you should be familiar with the basic laws of logic and logical fallacies. End quote. And here are some books that I recommend. Cricket, 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 cricket. Oh yeah, he doesn't recommend any books. He recommends you read his page on logic. Quote, it's very useful to point out the various logical fallacies to atheists as they commit them. End quote. Lazy teaching is lazy. Now look, I would love to go on and on about how I use the logical fallacy counter and how I make sure to explain the logical fallacy that have been committed and why they matter to the conclusion and how even they could change them to make their arguments better. But I'll leave all that aside because I don't need to boost myself up here because this isn't about me. This is about Slick's bad ideas that he's giving sheeple. We're in a normal conversation in a chat room, whether it be text chat or voice chat. We're not using precision language. And so I would expect people to use or make logical fallacies. Not deliberately, I would hope, but unintentionally, because we're not being precision language here. We're not trying to form premises and get to... we are trying to maybe get to a conclusion, but we're having a conversation. So he's training his sheeple to nitpick, essentially, is what this amounts to. If you're in a logical argument, yes, point out the fallacies, but go beyond that. Why does that matter, and how could it be reshaped to work better and thus enhance the argument or make it more comprehensible in some way? But Slick doesn't want his sheeple to be thinking, so we're not going to get that. So if you have somebody just going logical fallacy at you, I guess the only response would be, okay, do you have a logically coherent argument for your side? They don't, so we're done, I guess. Quote, therefore be familiar with logical fallacies or fallacies in argumentation, end quote. Bleep, no, I'm not reading a page about logic written by Slick, even if he copied and pasted it from somewhere else. I just don't trust it. But I would say instead of doing that, instead of reading anything by Slick, read a book about logic. Quote, the laws of logic are conceptual by nature and are always true all the time everywhere. They are not physical properties. How do atheists account for them from an atheist perspective? End quote. The ideas that are in our brains are physical because they are reducible to chemical and electrical impulses. So no matter how much you want to try to insert duality here, duality is not necessary for the laws of logic to function. As far as an atheist perspective, I have zero idea what the bleep that is, other than not believing in God. I guess I could think that there is no God, but think that the laws of logic are some weird floating thing out there in the universe, the way Matt seems to want his sheeple to think that they are, but please excuse me, as I don't do that because I care about reality too much. Oh, there's more. So much more. But I'll do more in video 3, part 3.5 plus question mark. I'll just call it Catapult Pancakes. It's blah blah blah, and they're it's all Matt's fault. It's all Matt's fault. How do you know that the logic